What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And this one I want to talk about what's going on with SPY, Tesla, Nvidia, the QQQ, and many tickers out there. I want to talk about some very important tests to watch for on all these different stocks for tomorrow. And then talk about what data is going to be dropping and some very important things to watch for on these charts. Before I do anything like this, let me just mention a couple of things. I am firstly not a financial planner, so take none of this as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo with the link down below and deposit $100 into the account, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks plus a $50 cash reward. The offer ends in 4 days, so check it out before they run out. Anyways, now let's talk about the market. How are things looking? So I just want to mention to everyone that we have some data dropping very soon. We have the Dallas Fed Manufacturing Index 1 hour after the market opens. And besides that, there's no other major piece of data for all of Monday. Now, after the market opens, we're going to see some interesting volatility. There's a chance the market may try to push up just to start us off, but the question is, can the market break out or not? I'm going to break down some other resistance levels in just a minute or so. For earnings, just as a reminder, we just have a couple of things coming out. It's nothing too significant, except for like Neo and Best Buy for Tuesday before the market opens, also for like Big Lots and a couple of other retailers, but nothing too big, right? Nothing too big is going to be coming out for the next couple of days, except for like these. We also have HP, but it's not like that huge. But like I said before, most of the earnings that we were basically anticipating for the last couple of weeks are already out. And now things are cooling off just a little bit. But for the week itself, there are some big things coming out. For Tuesday, we have like the JOLTS job openings. For Wednesday, we have some GDP numbers, not to mention some PCE estimation numbers as well. And then for Thursday, we're going to be having the PCE report coming out and very important inflationary measure from the Fed with the Chicago PMI as well. And then for Friday, we have more jobs numbers coming out, the non-farm payrolls, the unemployment rate. That's going to be very important for the market as well. So lots of data coming out towards the end of the week from PCE to the unemployment numbers. That's going to be for Thursday and Friday. And then besides that, it's not that crazy for the first couple of days. We do have the JOLTS for Tuesday, but nothing else. Just for tomorrow, it's just the Dallas Fed Manufacturing Index. Anyways, let's talk about the charts. How are things looking for SPY right now, or even SPX? Well, one of the things we talked about how there's this like head and shoulders that developed on it, but there are no guarantees the head and shoulders will always play out. So we have to watch for the test to see if that ends up being the case. Now, what is interesting about the charts would be the fact that on the 4-hour time frame, you could argue that there's a slanted head and shoulders that could be developing, but this could also be like a trap. This could be like a fake out for a lot of people out there, unless this is like kind of slanted and we have like room to go a little higher before we get some kind of rejection. But keep this in the back of your mind just to be safe. There's a possible head and shoulders on like the medium term time frame that still could play out, but we have to watch if we see any sorts of rejections. Now, one thing worth mentioning is, yes, that's for like the medium term, right? For the next month or so, whether this plays out or not, it's going to depend on different factors. But when you zoom out of the chart even more, just as a reminder from my video from yesterday and beyond, look at this cup and handle forming on SPY right now. We also have this on SPX. We had so many bullish months, okay? Getting a pullback like this is completely fine, completely normal, and I interpret this as a pullback in the markets. This month so far has been a pullback, nothing out of the ordinary. This is what you expect when you have so many bullish months in a row. So could the market sink more? Yeah, it's a possibility. We may get a little pop just to start off this week, but later on, right, in September, there could be a little bit more downside depending on like the CPI numbers, depending on the banking situation, and etc. If there's a little bit more downside, I don't think the market's going to crash. I was saying this in my earlier videos. I don't see this as a crash. I see this as a very healthy pullback because we are forming a nice cup and handle and also potential inverse head and shoulders on the much larger time frames. So what this is looking like is we could see another like kind of like sideways month, maybe another drop in September overall. But as we approach October, I think things should start changing, very similar to what happened last year. And November is historically one of the strongest months of the year for the markets. Even like for 2022, it was a decent month. We could see the same thing this year. We should, in my opinion. We may close the year on a very strong end for a very nice rally, forming this cup and handle. Now, I say this as long as there isn't like a very like horrible catalyst that comes out. And so far, we're not really seeing something that horrible, like a new virus that's like so huge, or like, a massive war breaking out, something like that, hypothetically. So I want to make this as clear as possible. The technicals look like For the medium term, there could be downside as we approach like September later on during the months. But for the end of this year, as months pass, we look like we could see a very strong rally to end the year. I'm going to break down more details about this in a later video, but let me just mention now for tomorrow specifically, what on earth I'll be watching for, because tomorrow is very different from the monthly chart. And here's the thing about the market, okay? It was very interesting what happened on Friday, because when Jerome Powell was speaking, he basically repeated the same things we've heard him say like millions of times essentially. So it really tells me that the market wasn't really shaken that horribly by him. It's more like we got this pop, this big drop, and we came back up. But my question is, how come the bears were not able to cause the market to like tank very hard? If anything, the bulls came in and they took over. They're clearly a little bit stronger. That tells me that we're going to be watching this test for tomorrow. SPY is going to push up to 442 most likely. Okay. Now, the question is, can we continue breaking out, or are we going to see a big rejection back to the lower levels? And this is going to be the very important test. Does SPY, okay, watch this. Does SPY end up breaking from here to retest 442? And can we break above this channel to get a true breakout? Because there are signals that the bulls are getting stronger. If we do so, you're going to be watching 444. If that rejects, there's going to be 446. If we manage to break that, and this is all like for the week spaced out, if we break 446, we could see this thing push up to 451 or higher levels. This is just like for the entire week, by the way, not just like for one day, but you understand my point, right? If we manage to break some of these levels, we could see this thing just start like shooting to like 450 plus if this is truly a breakout. But that's not a guarantee, because what if we do get the pump, but there's a bad piece of news and this head and shoulders does play out? For this to play out, we want to see this thing reject very close to 442. This is looking kind of flat, so I can see that it's not really slanted near the neckline. So if it rejects, 440 is going to be key. If it breaks below that, all the way down below 438, that could be a signal that this thing is going to start tanking. So it all depends on this test. I'm going to be watching this. It depends on the news and all these different factors. The market looks stronger though, so it is looking a little bit more likely it's going to try to break out, at least temporarily. And even if it does get this like breakout, right, it does not mean the market's just going to explode forever. It could easily come back down in the future as we approach September, back down to these lower levels, continue to trade sideways and do its thing, right? It could always come right back down. So I'm just trying to tell you, it's not going to go up forever. It could always come back down in September, which tends to be a weak month for the future. But it all depends on this test right here. Do we break 442 on SPY, or do we end up getting this rejection? We will find out tomorrow. It's very hard to predict at this point because there is technically a head and shoulders, but you want to be open-minded just to be safe, because you can't always trust a pattern. You can't solely depend on that. You have to watch for confirmation. You have to watch for that break. So watch 442 on SPY tomorrow. That is going to determine what's going to happen. We're going to see if this thing can break out or not, or does this thing end up failing? And by the way, if it breaks 442, you want to watch 444, 446 above that, and then 448. I mean, if it gets above 446, I think it's going to go all the way up to 451. So watch those levels carefully. If it gets to rejection, you're going to be watching 440, 438, 435, that entire zone right there as support. If it breaks below 435, we're going to see this thing retest the low at 433. So watch these levels. I'm going to be watching this test right here. This test is going to be key tomorrow. Watch 442. We'll see if this ends up stopping SPY or not. That's going to be a very, very key level. For the triple Q, it's the same thing as SPY. We have this tight resistance zone right over here. The zone of resistance around this 366 area to 367. Are we going to see this rejection? We're going to see this test tomorrow most likely. Do we reject and start sinking for the head and shoulders to play out? Right? That's a possibility. I would not rule out the possibility like that. Or does the market see the bulls remain so strong? Because right now, the market making a higher low. If you look at this trend, we're making higher lows. So it looks like the bulls might try to push this out, and this could be like a trap. This whole head and shoulders could be a trap that formed to trick people into thinking the market's going to sink. And there's a possibility of us just breaking all the way up to these imbalance levels around this 372 area. So both of these are possible, okay? And like I said about SPY, even if we do get this break, it could always come right back down in the future as we approach September. That's always a possibility. But I'm trying to tell you all that I don't know if the market's going to keep breaking out or if we're going to see this rejection. All right, it's kind of like 50-50 right now. It depends on the news, and we're going to be watching this test right here. This zone right here is going to be key for the triple Q. We're going to be watching, do we break it or do we end up failing? That's going to be key. Make sure you watch that very carefully. What about for Tesla, right? Tesla is one of the most retail traders' favorite stocks. Tesla has this rising wedge, which makes me a little bit concerned about it. We might see that rug pull, or there could be just a trap. Sometimes that happens. You can't always trust a rising wedge until you truly get the break. We haven't truly broken below this, so there are two possibilities for Tesla. I'm trying to be as unbiased as possible. This thing could test 242, right? I don't know if it's going to break above that or not, because we have a head and shoulders, right? We have this left shoulder here. Right here is the left shoulder. Right here we have the head, and now we're forming a potential right shoulder. If we get the rejection off 242 on Tesla, if it fails to break 244 as resistance, we could see Tesla get a big rejection and start coming down. If it breaks below 238, you're going to be watching support around 235 to 234. That fails us. 230 is going to be the key support. It has to try to hold this 230 to 228 zone. If that fails, Tesla could sink much lower to come down to fill its gaps down below, right? But what if there's good news? The market is excited. The bulls take over, because on Friday, the market sank and then the bulls took over. They pushed it up. So if the bulls are the stronger ones, if the bulls manage to break this level right here, if they break 242 on Tesla, you're going to be watching 244, the high right here, 244. If Tesla breaks that, we could invalidate the head and shoulders. This whole thing could have just been a trap set for retail. This entire formation could be a trap. And then this thing could just get a back test and just start breaking out to 250. There is a possibility of that, not a guarantee. I'm not promising anything. We're just going to be watching this test. Do we break 242 or not? We have a rising wedge. So on Tesla, it looks like it might actually break down. But just to be safe, I want to watch for the confirmation of a breakout. I want to watch for the test. I want to watch for this level. Okay. The news dictates Tesla a lot. We'll see what news comes out tomorrow morning. That's going to give us the key sign for whether or not this breaks out. For Nvidia, I'm anticipating a bounce on Nvidia because, hold on, I think I pulled up the wrong charts. Right here, we have Nvidia. Nvidia needs to bounce, and it should try to get a small bounce from here. I'm going to be watching it try to push up back to about 470 or so. And then we're going to be watching to see if this thing can establish a big change in market structure. So, what is the market structure right now, right? If you look at Nvidia very, very carefully, notice something. This thing has been making a lower high, a lower low, a lower high. This is the lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower, right? The list goes on. Are we going to continue this trend? Is Nvidia going to maintain this market structure? Is it going to keep on doing this and this and this? Is it going to keep doing this? Right? Is it going to keep dropping like this? That's a possibility. But in my opinion, looking at the divergence and looking at this key support at 450, this is a very strong demand zone. We saw a lot of buyers coming in right here. We also have this imbalance around this 470 area. So what I'm thinking is we're going to get a back test here, right? Nvidia is going to try to push for 470 probably. But then the question is, will Nvidia reject off that? Will we fail to hold this 470 area? Will we get this big rejection and then maintain this bearish market structure? Right? That's a possibility. If there's bad news or something like that happens, we also have a gap below. So we're going to be watching that carefully. Or does Nvidia change the market structure? Does it push up like this, establish a higher low, and start pushing in the opposite direction as the bulls come in and they start pushing the market up? That could happen, but we have to watch this test around this 470 imbalance area. We have to see if Nvidia could try to break that or not. That's going to be a very, very important test. So I hope that's as clear as possible for everyone. I wish I could predict this, but I want to just be as open-minded as possible on this test. It's going to be key for tomorrow. And with that said, one thing that's actually kind of good for the markets would be Aapl. Aapl is trying to hold up, right? If you look at Aapl, this is looking like a cup and handle that could be forming. So I'm very open-minded to both the bullish and bearish cases. I want to be as open-minded as possible. If the bulls step in, they could push this thing to about 180 plus. If that breaks, we could start pushing because of these imbalances here. You're going to be watching these imbalances, right? The algos, the robots, saw a big drop. What are they going to do? Balance the net flow, push it up. That's what they're going to do if we break and hold 180, especially. And we have more of them. If we break below 178 and we start pushing down, we're going to be watching for a change in market structure. It's very simple. But notice how Aapl formed a double bottom and got a break from here and established a higher low. It looks more bullish. It looks like it might try to get above 180, but just to be safe, we want to watch this test. Does Aapl break 180 and then start breaking out like this, right? Does this happen to Aapl? Does it make higher highs and higher lows? 180 is going to be the key level to watch for the week. Or does Aapl fail? Does it try to break out and just come short and just starts rejecting like this? If we get a big wick on the top and it breaks below 178, that could be our sign of a big rejection. I'm leaning in the direction of Aapl actually trying to push up, just looking at the current structure. It looks more bullish, and this might cause the market to break out and trick a lot of people looking at the head and shoulders. That could be the trap, and Aapl could be the thing that dictates the market upwards. It looks more bullish, but just to be safe, let's see what news comes down. Let's just watch it tomorrow just for safety. I want to be a little careful this time around. Last but not least, let me just briefly talk about a couple of others. Microsoft is the same thing. This is looking like it's trying to base, at least for the time being. We're going to be watching this test right here at about 325. If it breaks and holds this and pushes, we're going to see 328 and this imbalance to get filled at 332 if it breaks that. If it fails and gets a rejection very close to 325 to 326, it's going to come all the way down and push right back down to about below like 315 or so. So we're going to be watching that test on Microsoft. For AMD, this thing came all the way down to about 99.5. If this thing is ready, because we're starting to form a bullish divergence, if the divergence is going to play out, we want to see this thing break above 102, then 104. If not, we could see a big rejection and see this thing sink below 98. So watch that carefully. It's going to be a very important test. And for the VIX, I just want to mention that the VIX, of all things, I'm not really, this thing is looking like it could be forming a head and shoulders as well. If the VIX breaks below 15, if it starts pushing down below 15, you're going to be watching support right here at like the 14.6 area. If that breaks, if it starts breaking below that, this is starting to turn a little bit more bearish. This could start filling this gap down here, and that's going to be because of the market pushing. The VIX is suggesting the market might try to get a bounce, but I always want to be open-minded just to be safe because we do have those head and shoulders, which could be traps, which are forming. The dollar has a bearish divergence that developed right here. If the dollar bearish divergence plays out and this thing starts sinking below 103.8, the dollar could get a pullback, and that could help the market pump a little bit. So we want to be open-minded and watch that carefully. I think a bounce is a possibility. Some signals are suggesting it's a little bit more likely, but just to be safe, we want to watch the levels. Is Coinbase forming like a head and shoulders? We're going to get a test at this 77.24 level. If we break it, this thing can push for 79.3. If that breaks, it's going to push into the 80s. If it gets rejected right here, 77.24, it's going to sink down, and we're going to see this slow down. So we're going to be watching that test carefully. For Google, it's the same thing. We're going to be watching this test right here at about 132. Do we break it or not? If we break this resistance right here, 132, it's going to push this imbalance at 134. If it rejects off 132, I'm going to expect this to come all the way back down to about 128 or lower, to even lower levels than that. It's going to be a big test. 132 is going to be key for Google. Watch that carefully. For Amazon, same thing. We're going to be watching, can Amazon get above 134? If it does so, watch these imbalances. Watch it push all the way up to about 137. If it fails to break 134.75, it's going to come all the way back down to 132.5 and then potentially even 130. So that's going to be another important test. Meta came down, but what's interesting is it could be in the process of trying to establish a change in market structure. We technically made a higher low on Meta, technically. So we're going to be watching, can this thing hold above 285? If it does so, I'm going to be watching this push back to about 290 and then 292.8. That's going to be the 50 EMA to watch for. In my opinion, Meta is looking in the middle, a little bit weaker than the market. So we're going to be seeing, could this thing try to get back above 290? The chart, like I said, is not looking as strong. So I want to watch this very carefully. And that's going to be our key test for tomorrow. So which direction am I leaning in? I'm in the middle, guys. I want to be honest with you. The reason why I'm in the middle is because we have a head and shoulders forming on SPY. You never know, they could still play out. But looking at the dollar and the VIX, they're suggesting, and also Aapl, that the market may try to bounce. They all are suggesting that the stock market could try to bounce very soon tomorrow. So I'm going to be in the middle. I want to be open-minded. I want to watch both levels very carefully. And we're going to be watching the critical test for tomorrow. Sometimes I have to make videos like this. I wish I could predict it, but we have to just wait and see. And the best thing to do is to be as calm, cool, and collected as possible. I thank you all for listening. Have a great weekend. do what you have to do, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you, and peace out.